I don't know if any of you guys watched Stefon Diggs on the shop. It's available on YouTube through their page or whatever. But he was on the shop, I think this last week or whatever, and that's just kind of if you don't know what it is, it's just kind of like a hang back talk show. You're hanging out in a barbershop setting, kind of shooting the shit. And I think the lack of information that comes out about the Bills leads fans to go down these, and obviously Stephon Diggs fuels the fire of Bills fans with cryptic messaging, and we know there was frustration. But he goes on the show, and I don't know if either of you guys watched it or saw clips. I didn't think anything Stephon Diggs said was wrong or bad, and I think some people tried to maybe look into that as like, look how frustrated he is. He said something about being able to play his brother this year that's on the schedule, and he said, yeah, for now. And people took that as like, oh yeah, like he's working his way out. Like I just feel like everything the guy says now, no matter what, because he's honest and he just talks and spits, that people somehow think that he's like working his way out or doing what he did in Minnesota. And I just didn't see it in that episode at all. Did you catch it, Chris?
I haven't watched that particular interview yet, but I've seen the other stuff that he's been saying and seen some of the tweets and everything. And I think honestly, man, it's more about people's own like insecurities coming out when they're trying to uh, interpret everything he says and put it through this lens of like, oh, he's not happy here. I mean, it's not that he's one of the best players that's ever worn a Bills uniform. I mean, you've talked about it before. He probably is the most talented receiver. We're not talking about career stats yet, obviously, but in terms of raw talent and what he's able to do on a football field, he's right up there. I mean, if he's not number one, he's like on the same level as some of the other guys who have historically played that position for the Bills. But so I think it's tough for people when you know um, there's any indication that he's not happy, and you've got this narrative from Minnesota, which obviously felt like it got a little blown out of proportion at the time. That there, I don't know. Like I said, I think it's just an
Yeah.
indication of people being insecure.
I think the Minnesota thing was different for me because one, that Super Bowl window closed very quickly in Minnesota, and then it seemed like they were just kind of like a playoff window and maybe they could be sneaky good, and they didn't seem to be convinced that they were a Super Bowl team necessarily there. And his contract was perfect for trading, right? Like he was in that prime spot that you look at. That's why a year before that trade happened, and there was even rumblings that he was going to get traded then, I was pounding the table. Unfortunately for me, I deleted my Twitter account. I would have those receipts for you. Like I was pounding the table a year before because that contract was looking like it made sense as, hey, if he ain't happy, we can make him happy. That's not really the case right now. Like I'm sure there's examples of large contracts with all that guaranteed money getting moved, but Brandon Beane would really have to get like Stefon Diggs would have to show up at his house and spit like in his house or something for Brandon Beane to want to make that type of
Even
financial
that,
destruction to move right now with the window open. It just doesn't make sense. And nothing like
yeah,
also this isn't some like crazy he's being a diva, won't share locker rooms with people or whatever, like some wacky diva stuff. Like Stefon Diggs is frustrated that the Bills, he's been here 3 years now, just like fans are frustrated. They got to a AFC championship game. They haven't been back yet and they haven't been able to get over that hump. Like this, that's okay. I want everyone in the locker room to be as pissed off as Stefon Diggs is, frankly.
it's funny because a lot of his emotion mirrors the fans' own emotion, and,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's tough. It's tough, like when people don't seem to recognize
That
that
also
and
doesn't mean
and
he
and empathize with it.
what also I don't get is like we're all human, and so we have these other like you said, it mirrors my emotions towards the team. I also get frustrated in real life. Like we work at Cover One, there's times where people that you work with get frustrated with each other in real life when at your jobs. Like you get frustrated with people that you're working with or the direction of the company. That doesn't mean you're going to quit. It doesn't mean you're going to demand something else. Like you can be frustrated and then things can start to work out. Winning fixes everything. They're going to win a lot of games next year. Like he's going to get a lot of production. What they need is to get back into the groove of training camp and get back into playing with each other. I think everything will work itself out. Like I don't know. everyone's looking for some smoke here, and I think it's unfair because we don't want cookie cutter answers. We don't want the PR response all the time from people. But the second a guy like Stefon Diggs talks about how he really feels, then you get this reaction. So I understand why guys don't do it.
It's just funny to me that he can put out, a 7-word tweet that means literally nothing, and you've got hundreds of people like, replying to him with all this like nonsense that, trying
Vitriol,
to
yeah.
frame it. Yeah, and it's like I guess he's inviting that, like, to a certain extent. Like, if he didn't like seeing that sort of stuff, he wouldn't do what he does. But
He's
the
dramatic.
same time, it's like it drives me nuts because, like, I would. We talked about this, I think, last week in the context of Tremaine Edmonds.
Sure.
Um, I hate the idea that stuff like that would drive a good player away. And I like logically, obviously, I realize it probably doesn't play a huge role in their psyche, but I always wonder,
And
man,
it's
because
everywhere.
everyone's a little different.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
No matter where they go, if they act this way, you're going to get these reactions. I don't think it's exclusive to the mafia, but I do think just as good as the mafia can be, with that also comes the counter. The balance to that is when we get pissed, it can be real ugly as well. So I get all that, but I don't know. I don't think it's a situation where he's working his way out here. I think
No, I don't either.
everything's going to be fine.
Yeah, fellas, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can I chime in with one thing on that?
Definitely.
Yeah, of course.
So this is kind of I'm not going to go on a rant. I don't want to take too much time with this, but I need to say this because I was going through some of the replies on Diggs' tweets. Guys, to the people, and they're probably not in these spaces, but just to the Bills fans who are trying to make it like a personal thing, please stop. This man is an athlete who said nothing that was actually specific, yet the narrative about his anger or his quote unquote anger, quote unquote frustration with the organization, him being unhappy, is completely unfounded. And when you compound on this false narrative with replies that are just directly attacking him when he's done absolutely nothing but show emotion for the game he plays and the team he plays for, and he has said nothing that has been a personal attack on the organization, Josh Allen, Sean McDermott, anybody, it's childish, it's silly, and it needs to stop. This fan base, those members of this fan base, because again, it's probably not anyone in the spaces, needs to do better and respect that these people are human. There's nuance in every statement. Even what Ed Oliver posted shouldn't be taken at face value, which I think is another rant I could go on. But it needs to stop. It's honestly insane to me that we're going to try and attack the best player on this team or one of the best players on this team for something that is not even, there's no back to it. It's just crazy to me. So that's all I wanted to say.
I think that's
Yeah, well said.
totally fair. Well said. Well, you know who else had a good point on this? Rico, from Fanatics. I thought he put out a video, clip. It's on his page. He talked about, I think the point that I agreed the most with, I don't know that I agreed with all of what he said, but the thing I agreed the most with is there is a set of optics to this. And while I don't believe that just because you're a player that you have to be somebody that's looked up to or something like that, like kids, you have to be a role model for children or anything like that. But you are responsible a little bit for optics and how you're perceived and how things are perceived, right? And I think Stefon Diggs is aware enough of his image and persona to probably understand some of the panic of the fan base. I agree with you, Joe, that like anyone attacking him personally, like that's uncalled for. But I also do understand a level of the fan base that is nervous, the nervous mafia, the frustrated mafia of, okay, we get it, you're frustrated. I think him believing that he's frustrated isn't unfounded. I think we saw it rear its head in the game. He wasn't, it's not unfounded why he was frustrated. We all saw why. And even in the shop, I think go watch it. He's openly talking about being frustrated that they have not been able to get over this hump. He doesn't understand why. He's racking his brain. We've got the players, we've got the plays. It's an execution thing, is what he's saying. So there's frustration, but to your point, it's not directed at anyone specifically. He's not being malicious. Like it's all honesty. And so I think it's okay for fans to be a little nervous about it and to be frustrated that it's kind of being displayed publicly. But the attacking personally, that's my line. Like, be frustrated. You can talk about that. Making personal attacks and trying to push player out. Kind of to Chris's point, like players don't need to see this stuff. Like I could be critical of a player without making it personal and being weird about it.
Yeah, just taking it a little too seriously. I mean, I rarely tweet. Like I never tweet about the Bills. I responded to somebody who had replied to Stefon Diggs' tweet this week that, what did he say? Something about it's not business or it's not personal, it's just business. Um, and somebody responded like, you know, if you're not happy here, hope you good luck somewhere else or whatever. And just like, dude, it's not that serious. Like, come on.
It was a tweet that was like, what with Buffalo it is personal, and when you do this kind of
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah,
it's personal. Like, what did he do? What did he do? Like, it's like chasing a dragon that doesn't exist.
yeah. It's just a shame that
Yeah.
that's for sure like 1% or less of people. But that's I think the way social media works though is we all saw that tweet probably. It gets passed around, everybody sees it, and then I'm a huge part of this where I can't help myself from responding to people a lot of the time. I'm like a meme of the kid holding his breath, like trying not to give a response, and so I take the bait all the time, but it amplifies these.
You like to poke the bear.
It amplifies. I hate it though because it does amplify. People will call me out and they'll be like, "Hey, you're amplifying this message." And it's like, yeah, I know. I can't help myself. I'm broken. I apologize. I'm sorry on me. Uh, but it does. It really is a small percentage, and I hope that the players do know that. I actually had Tyrell Dotson, a friend of the show, uh, show up in my mentions while I was like heading to vacation because I had said something that I didn't. I thought he was like a below average replacement level player. I wasn't saying anything wrong, or no, I said he was going to show up in the mentions, and then he did show up in somebody else's mentions, and I responded to him and was like, "Hey, like we know you're searching your name, just by the way, like because nobody's tagging you in this stuff. Like I would stop," and he got offended by it. But that's the kind of I think attention to the fan base that players don't need. I've seen Isaiah McKenzie show up in my mentions before where I didn't tag him, but he's just showing up because he's searching his name, and you're gonna find negative stuff online. And nothing I'm saying is like bad. It's not a personal thing. It's like, hey, I think Isaiah McKenzie's a little bit limited in this role. But if you look far enough, if you keep looking for your name, you're going to see some people being real assholes to you on the internet.
Yeah. You look for it and you seek and you shall find the negative opinions.
Oh my God. Yeah. I have a lot of mutes for how mean people are. Hans is out here. I invited Uber to come speak here because smart guy. I see Thomas out there. Thomas, you on the route here? You welcome to come speak. We spent a lot of time talking about Diggs and stuff that actually doesn't have anything to do with football. That sucks. Um, Free agency's coming up. We're probably not going to get to talk again until we know news. You were sitting in the back.
Things.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say things will look different a week from now
Mm,
for sure. Like we will know some of our questions will be answered.
for sure.
We're going to know what's going on with some of these players, and it'll be really interesting to check in.
Let's Hans, what's going on, dude? I see you accepted the invite.
Hey, boys.
What's happening, man?
Yeah, just listen to the Diggs talk, and that seems to be the prevailing conversation here over the past few weeks.
Did you get a chance to watch the shop interview he did?
No, I just saw some of like the quote tweets or the quotes of what he said, and I mean, my thing with it is I think there's a bunch of things can be true at the same time. I think
Yeah.
Diggs is frustrated. I think he's voicing it a little bit too much to a point where it's getting annoying. I don't think it means he wants out of Buffalo. I think his frustration's also correct. But I also do wish he would take a little bit more, because I haven't seen much of this from him, take a little bit more personal responsibility for what happened. I mean, I know he's double covered more than anybody else on the Bills, but at points I want Diggs to go make a play or find a way to get open or something along those lines. And a lot of that has to do with play calling. A lot of that has to do with Josh not looking his way because he's double covered. But if you're going to rip into the team and everybody else, I'd like a little bit more ownership from him. The one good thing I'll say is a lot of times he talks about criticism. He uses the word "we," which personally, like just from a business background, that's the best way to go
That's
about
true.
it, is you say we have issues, we did something wrong, and you don't take credit. Like, you don't say, I did this well. So I do appreciate that Diggs tends to not really do that. Similar to Josh Allen. Like, Josh Allen is very well known for the way he speaks in interviews. He constantly says we when he talks about positive things, and he very rarely says I when he talks about positive things.
So I know you've watched that Bengals divisional round game like 4 times now. Did you notice Diggs, running open and Josh not seeing it or anything like that throughout that game? That
Yeah. I mean, just a handful of I mean, all in all, I said this in the Cover One chat yesterday, and I think a lot of people are going to think I'm a homer when I say this publicly. I don't think the Bengals game was as bad as people are making it out to be. Like I said, like Chris just said, I've watched that game now 4 times, and I think it came down to plays that were inches away, like just a couple plays. You just look at one of the very first plays of the game with Diggs, right? Allen misses him by inches on kind of like a little deep fade. If Allen hits him there, Diggs probably runs it in for a touchdown. We might be talking about a different game. There's another play later. Dane Jackson goes up. He's probably 2-3 inches away from an interception. That could have changed the game. Like, all these little moments in that game where the Bills could have just, maybe Allen throws it a little less hard. Maybe Dane jumps a little higher. If those change, a game that was a 1-score game in the third quarter quickly turns into a game that was much closer than what the final score indicated. That's not saying that the Bills played a good football game or deserve to win. But if you go back and watch that game with kind of an open mind, you're going to see some things where it's like, well, wait a minute, this really wasn't this drubbing that everyone's making it out to be.
I think, though, to counter that a little bit here, that play you're talking about where he barely misses Diggs, if you also watch that play, you're going to see a Gabe Davis with like 15 yards of separation running down the opposite sideline because of the way the coverage was dictated by those routes. Gabe Davis was wide open, and Allen should have been going to Gabe Davis. I want Stefon Diggs and Allen to be able to make that play, even if it's not the right play, right? Those are the guys that can kind of be beyond doing the right things, and they can make up and erase some of that stuff. But that is what Eric Mosley showed me and the Cover One Slack members right after his breakdown of the game was, man, there was a lot of stuff that was actually dialed up pretty well here. Guys were open. The progressions were there. The defense gave us the look we expected. And the ball didn't go where it was supposed to. Like, I think Josh is not getting enough criticism. I think that's, if I had to speculate on this, I think that's where Stefon Diggs' frustration is coming into, is like, hey, we had these plays dialed up. Like, we could have gone shot for shot with this team. But I disagree that I think, as much as I've defended Leslie Frazier and the defense, I do think that side of the ball was as ugly as it looked. And I do think the offense was pretty ugly that day. They just weren't sharp. They weren't hitting the progressions where Joe Burrow was. He was hitting where he was supposed to be with the ball and moving efficiently.
And I will say, like, I've been pretty outspoken about this, that Josh needs to get way more, blame for that game than he's getting. People seem to refuse to criticize Josh Allen because he's Buffalo's savior. You can't say anything bad about him. If you do, you might as well not be a fan. And you go back and watch that game, and even worse, go back and watch the Dolphins game. If it wasn't for the defense in the Dolphins game, Josh Allen would have single-handedly lost the Bills that game. Like, bad interceptions, the fumble was kind of a blindside hit, but at the same time, hold on to the football. Like, the defense kind of bailed Josh Allen out that game. And then you go to the Bengals game and you're missing those open players. You're missing, some easy throws. But one thing, when we talk about that one throw with Diggs where Davis was open, I think this is one criticism I don't like about Bills fans. They constantly say, well, you got to feed Stefon Diggs. Just feed him. I don't care if he's double covered. Throw the ball to him. He's the best receiver on the team. You got to throw the ball to him. Well, if somebody's wide open and Josh throws to the wide open person and he's not throwing to Diggs, there's a reason for it. It seems like a catch-22 where he can't win at times because he's not throwing to Diggs because he's double covered. People are mad because Diggs isn't getting the ball. Meanwhile, he's throwing to somebody that's open, and people are frustrated again because Diggs isn't getting the ball. So I just think, like, a lot of this stuff requires context. We need to have a little bit more focus on what's actually happening, not just between two players, but in the entire game itself. And I don't know, going back to the Bills playoffs this year, I think people are kind of lost the context because they were just so frustrated in their feelings about what happened.
Yeah, I think that's
Football is a beautiful series of damned if you do, damned if you don't. I want to ask everybody one quick question. I know we want to move on from this topic, so it'll be the final thing I say about it. But do you take Diggs not being at the pressers at the end of the game instead of a bad thing as a good thing because it was a way to prevent himself from saying too much out of emotion rather than logic?
I'll start. I didn't care about it at the time. I didn't think about it all that much. You'd have a tough time. My thought was you'd have a tough time getting me to sit down and talk to the people in the media who some of the people are going to try to elicit responses. And I think I'm like Diggs in that way, to your point, I guess, is that, yeah, I don't think I could just not give you an emotional reaction and response. So, yeah, maybe it's good on him. I do think I don't know that he made it as a conscious decision. I think it's more of the benefit that was from an emotional decision to not, I would say, if I, again, had to speculate.
Having over the course of the last season started producing your and Greg's show, Aaron, I'll say, it's I've seen like how difficult it is for you guys to like go on screen and recap a loss like that. It's totally different. Obviously, it's not a direct comparison. Obviously,
Yeah, I don't
for someone
nearly
like
work as hard.
Diggs who was on the field, yeah. But like just like you imagine that amplified exponentially for a player. But like coming out of the live post game show on Cover One, and as soon as the live feed drops and we're we're off the air, and all of a sudden it's like F mother F, what the F? It's like we don't want people to see that. And I can imagine like a player who's feeling those emotions amplified by 100. Like it's just I get it, I understand. And if whether that was him trying to keep his the worst of his emotions from being in those press conferences or what, I don't really fault him for not being there.
Thomas, we haven't heard from you yet as your speaker. You have any thoughts on any of this?
How we doing, guys? How's your Friday?
Cold. How about over in Rochester?
It's chilly. I'm glad I'm gonna be out before the snow really hits today, but it's good. It's good. So in regards to the Stefon Diggs stuff, and I actually, ironically enough, just started listening to the shop and then paused it to be able to come and listen to you guys here. I always kind of go back to this thought process of mine that imagine if we had Twitter during the Bills of the 90s, right? Like, we would hate some of these players nowadays because we revere a lot of these players from the 90s and who they were and what we thought about them. But in a very kind of broad spectrum, these guys were not angelic. A lot of these guys, in fact, had some pretty terrible things behind the scenes that either they did or were part of or whatever. And for all intents and purpose, and if you watch the shop, you'll see this. As I started watching. You kind of get into it. Stefon Diggs lost his father. He talks about how he raised his brother. Like, the guy is more than what you perceive, and just because of what he says does not dictate who he is. I feel like there is nuance to statements. There are things that you have to read between the lines, and is he a frustrated person? Of course. I mean, there are days that with my job, I'm incredibly mad about things that happen, but it is what it is. You go home and you brush it off and go forward. And I feel like there's this weird sentiment amongst Bills fans that we've got to grab the pitchforks and drive these bad people out of the franchise because we're blue collar and we stand for things. And it's like, the guy loves this team. He loves this city. You can see it. We talk about how Stefon Diggs is that guy before the games and throwing the football with fans. It's like, two things can be true. I like what Hansel said, like, just because one thing happened doesn't mean it's completely, that's the narrative of who he is as a person. He can be emotional and also a very good person, and he is. So I don't know. I feel like we're going after a guy for being for caring about what he does. And he does. I mean, you can see it on the field. We talk about all season long and all off season about how he cares about his craft. You see videos of him training. It's like, dude, if he didn't give a shit, I feel like he wouldn't be on Twitter, you know? And at that same time, I think the other part that really kind of, I think we have to take a step back and say, it's the off season. This is the time where Bills fans are drumming stuff up to talk about because we're bored, you know. And it's like let's take a step back. It's okay. Everything's going to be fine. Stefon Diggs still likes it here, and I think Greg Tobbs has said it enough. I'm sure he's probably tired as shit of it. There's $45.5 million in reasons why Stefon Diggs is not going anywhere. So let's take a deep breath. It'll be okay, and I think this season's going to be better than last.
Well said. Yep. Greg has laid it out pretty clearly. There it would be extremely financially detrimental to trade Stefon Diggs. It's like to the point where it will not happen. So any talk you see, any jersey edits where you see Stefon Diggs wearing a Cowboys jersey, it's all just for clicks. Don't pay it any mind.
Yeah, that's where the conversation goes too far. Like we talk about it. I think another point to be made, if anyone's frustrated in terms of like accountability of him complaining out there or having any types of thoughts, like there is nobody that probably works harder at his craft than Stefon Diggs. Like that's one thing he talked about in the shop. Like you could see it. He's dead serious when he's like, I want to be great. Like all I want is greatness. All I want is winning. Like I work at this all the time. This is what I do. Like I don't mind him being vocal. Like if you're gonna be vocal and then all I see you is partying in the off season and messing around, but like we see him put in the work. We know what he's done and it shows up every day. Like I don't think there's any more accountability of him personally. I think he can talk about those weed problems. Waiting for news, I've seen a little bit of rumblings of people feeling frustrated that we haven't seen the Bills restructures and all that stuff to clear the cap space for the Bills news coming out, where we are seeing whether it's re-signing guys or creating cap space from other teams. What's your thoughts on? Do you think Brandon Beane's got those deals done and just has no rush to put them out? Do you think they're still working through that stuff right now?
I don't remember who. I think it might have been Eric who put this in the Cover One Slack yesterday. That the timing of when moves started happening last year, and we're getting right. I mean, we're already kind of at the point where we would have started to see things. So it's tough to say. I mean,
There's no benefit. We talk about it a lot on Cover One Buffalo. Like sometimes there's not a benefit to putting stuff out either way right now. Like you could have the deal done, and if the agent isn't in a rush to get it out into the news and the Bills don't care, like it could take a day or two. Like there's these people aren't in a rush to get some of the stuff. I think the teams that you see are in a rush to put news out there are trying to get a narrative changed about them or something like that. And I don't think the Bills care about that stuff right now. They'll put the news out as it gets out, but they're not going to, Brandon B's not going to call up Ian Rappaport or send him a text like, hey, we got this done. We want to brag about it.
there's also no incentive to announce stuff like, if guys are taking pay cuts, like if they, let's say they restructured Naheem Hines' deal, which is one of the things that people
Sure.
keep saying is, a logical step for them to take. There's no benefit to anybody to announce that that's taken place, that Hines has taken a pay cut or restructured, in some way to lower the cap hit this year. So yeah, like you said, there could be things that have already been worked out, but just haven't been made public yet.
Yeah, they don't have to report it till the start of the league year here, right? Like it doesn't have to be officially filed right away. So
So
maybe
4 p.m. on Wednesday next week.
right.
Yeah.
So
And Bill's PR is sneaky, man. I'm sorry, I just wanted to
yeah,
say they're
they
sneaky.
are.
They always seem to give you the news right at the tail end.
Yeah, and if you're
They are good at
getting
they're good at controlling the narrative for sure.
yeah, if it's going to be outside of a delivery from Bill's PR, and you can tell too, like when the guys on the beat start saying be a source this information, but Bill's PR also tweets it out at the same time, it's because the PR guy texted the group text and sent it to everybody. like giving them a heads up. That's the source.
Hmm.
Since the Sean McDermott era, it really is. I mean, I think everybody gets some form of information third hand or whatever. I get DMs all the time that's like my cousin works for the Bills and says this, or somebody, whatever. Like it's not what I would consider. I'm not a journalist. I didn't go to school for journalism, but I respect journalism. I wouldn't consider a lot of these things sources. I don't report on anything that people send to me in my DMs. I think those things are common. If you're going to have a real source from the Bills that's going to get reported in the media, it's going to be agent driven, I think. And you got to be careful with that stuff. We've seen before where agents and players have said they signed with places, but then the team doesn't sign them, or something didn't work out, or a trade fell through. So it's also a tough time of year because I think you will hear rumblings from people like, "Oh, I heard this from so and so." Man, you're not. It could be all in one day drop. Bills PR puts out one of their graphic tweets, and it's all the resignings, all the stuff, and they've held on to it, and then we're all scrambling, not getting any work done for a whole day because they did it.
Yeah, I think that the fact that not a lot gets out there, uh, I mean, obviously it's testament to how well they control the information in-house, but I think it's also a testament to how good the relationships are that Brandon Beane and his staff have with agents. Because, when you start to see stuff like that come out, um, it might be an indication the other way.
Sure. And there's been some stuff that I think has gotten out that maybe wasn't accurate or wasn't true, which Brandon Beane has addressed before. Like, I don't think he liked the way the Antonio Brown stuff got out there when that deal clearly wasn't a done deal. I don't think he let. There was another one a couple years back where he actually publicly stated like, this is not how we do business. So you're gonna run into relationships with either agents or teams. Washington, even last year, openly came out and talked about the frustration of how that deal got turned sideways. Uh,
Yeah,
so you're gonna
Beane was
run
not
into some
happy with
frustration.
Washington last
Yeah,
offseason.
yeah, it's business, and some people act probably shiesty during it. We could over the next few days see some trickling news from the Bills. Who knows? It'll probably happen during spaces. I feel like 3 or 4 times now when we're doing this, something legitimate happens, breaking news for the Bills. So it could come out, but I wouldn't be shocked if it's, other teams continue to slowly trickle out news and the Bills just drop it all at once at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on some random Tuesday or something, like Tuesday afternoon next week.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I 100% think that's going to happen. And also, it's been interesting because I remember Rex era Bills, a lot of info seemed to be coming out early. Now we're in the age where information is much more moderated. It's coming out at a pace that's slower, and it's also more controlled, which I think is a good thing for the organization. But it's funny how it's flipped, where people now want the news versus don't want it to come out.
Yeah. I think also it's a little bit of a double-edged sword because I do think people get frustrated with the lack of what comes out of one Bills drive. But we're about 30 minutes out. I got to bounce. Go pick up my kid. Chris, you were sitting behind the scenes with us this weekend or this week. We talked about offense last week and some of our offense free agent wish list guys. We did defense. We didn't get your take on it, on any of the guys that either we talked about, or do you think we missed anyone on that episode?
Should we talk about how Chuck Clark got traded for a 7th-round pick?
We could talk about that.
Like right out from under our noses. Look, I mean, I guess I just it's frustrating to see a player like that on a contract like that get traded for such a small return, and you just hope that there was a reason why Buffalo wasn't in on that. I mean, I could certainly see. I would have been happy to hear that the Bills traded a 6th-round pick to get Chuck Clark. So, there's got to be a reason, I would think, why they weren't in on that, or otherwise. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I'm going to be interested to see. I'm not going to give necessarily a take on it until I see how they plan to attack the safety position. I don't know what information they have about the guys they have, for one. I don't know what they think about the guys they have in house. We might be surprised to see what they already think of some of those guys come free agency, but they might have different targets. I think Eric and Anthony did a good job picking out some targets on their film room episode. I think even though one of the targets went back to the Texans yesterday, I think there were some guys available out there that both Greg and I were looking at. I know Greg had talked about Chuck Clark in the past, and it does seem like a real cheap way to get a guy, but we don't know what the safety market's going to look like or what deals are going to be had out there. And it could be guys that are younger or better fits. So if it plays out where it's Dean Marlowe is back to the Bills at safety and we missed out on free agency, then I'm going to be pissed. I'm not going to be pissed until I see that how the other shoe drops here and what they end up with.
Aaron, part of me wonders too is we know that Jordan Poyer, I think he'd be willing to come back. I wonder if they want to wait and see what his market truly looks like, because I feel like a lot of people, including myself, think his market could be softer than what maybe he thinks. And I feel like if you trade for a guy like Chuck Clark, that almost nixes the possibility that maybe you could get him to come back if his market is softer and it's like a $7 or $8 million deal.
Yeah, Poyer on a $7 or $8 million deal versus Chuck Clark on $3.5 million. Yeah, I mean, I love Jordan Poyer. I'd love to see him back. Don't get me wrong.
I'm also not. I know Chuck Clark grades out well, and he's good. He's a starting caliber safety. I also don't know if I'm as sold as others. It's a good value. It's a good value contract, and that's nice to have. I would prefer to keep Poyer, I think, in the scheme in terms of what he and Micah Hyde have. You're already losing. Continuity would be big for me right now. I don't see Poyer coming back, really. I think somebody's going to offer him, even if the Bills are in play at that deal we're talking. I think then you are talking about teams. There's things he's talked about, right? Like wanting to have more sun, avoiding taxes. Like I could see Miami, Houston, some of these teams where he would get a little bit of what he wants, and I wouldn't blame him there. And it would be a bigger contract, technically. So that one's a tough one. But if that market bottoms out, you're also going to see value deals on guys. John Johnson the third, I think, would be a guy that you would get in that value. There's other guys. Juan Thornhill could be a guy that falls off in terms of value in that market. I don't think safety market's going to be what we think, and I think we automatically assume, well, that means we can get Jordan Poyer back. I think, to me, it means I think we'll see value deals on guys that we maybe thought were out of our range going into it.
Wasn't Thornhill the one who kept getting toasted in the Chiefs secondary?
2 years ago. I think he had a pretty decent year this past year. He's got athleticism. He's young. I can go and show you clips of almost every safety again, Torrence, including Jordan Poyer.
Yeah, that's true.
But
well, it's like you said though. I mean, that's a position where the Bills can probably invest the least and get the most return, just based on. I mean, look at Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer as case studies of what McDermott and the Bills staff can do for safeties. So
I was just doing a quick peek of the the average annual value for current safeties, and I'm just kind of like scrolling through here and stuff, and I found where is he? Justin Reed, who's a pretty good safety with the Chiefs, got a AAV of 10.5. And he's 25 years old. So I'm starting to wonder now, looking at that, I think there's only two real, stud safeties on the market this offseason. That's Jesse Bates, Jordan Poyer. Bates is going to get a bigger contract than Poyer.
Market, right?
Just because he's so much younger. So you put Bates, he's probably going to be up, near Minkah Fitzpatrick numbers. But then I'm wondering where they're going to put Jordan Poyer. Like, is Poyer going to get? He's not going to get more than Kevin Byard. Byard's at 14-1. He's 25 years old. He's not going to get more than. I think Justin Reed's contract is probably maybe even slightly below that. So you're looking around 10 million. I mean, Greg probably has a better projection than me, but Jordan Poyer's age is going to work against him here. And that's not to say he doesn't deserve money. It's just teams aren't going to really want to invest in a 32-year-old safety for, 4 or 5 years, especially when you look at someone like Harrison Smith, who's still very good, but his contract is just a behemoth that the Vikings have to deal with.
Yeah, it's like there's a good chance that Jordan won't get necessarily what he thinks he's worth. and also he'll still get more than what the Bills can afford to pay for him.
Yeah, 100%.
Some of it depends if these rumors of Tremaine, like there's a weird mix of rumors about Tremaine right now that he's going to be like the Bills are expected to be not able to retain him, but then also we saw that his market's like 15 mil average. Those two things don't like line up in my head. How about you, like you guys? And I think that changes what they're willing to spend maybe at the safety position or replacing him at linebacker, obviously, if he moves on.
What did you say?
I'm saying like that.
There's reports that he's going to get 15.
Do you think those feel like conflicting reports that he's expected to move on from the Bills and that he's going to get 15 a year?
If Brandon Beane's not willing to pay Tremaine Edmonds more than 15, I'm gonna riot. But I just don't. That doesn't feel right to me.
Like maybe two sides are putting out information to counteract each other?
Yeah. It seems off.
Yeah.
But I mean, if we want to get into linebacker, there was one linebacker that was mentioned in passing on the Cover One Buffalo podcast, but wasn't one of your picks. And that's Eric Kendricks, who I think would be a great guy. If we lose Edmonds, like you guys said on the podcast, the linebacker position is somewhere where we do need to spend money. He's someone who can cover really well, and that's the type of player that we need in the Bills' defensive scheme. So he's someone who I'd be really interested to see them go after if they can't get a deal done with Tremaine.
For sure. Ahmad is out here and is speaking. You got anything specific you want to talk about, man?
Okay. Hi.
What's
So
happening?
I want to what's up? So I want to go for one NFL about the Bills. So I want Ellen Queen. You
Yeah,
watch Liverpool match?
never once in my life. Sorry.
Okay. You say to the eat them. So I want to get to Ellen and co-host. Why you go for the fan Buffalo just like cows?
Oh, I missed. I'm sorry. I can't totally hear it. Why Buffalo and what?
Did you say?
Cows? Cow.
Are you talking about the mascot?
Yes.
I don't know.
It's big like a cow.
It is
but
actually.
it's a
It's a
bison.
bison, and it's misleading because there are no actual buffalo in North America. It's all just American bison. They're not the same as the water buffalo of Africa. And it's also weird because I don't think buffalo was actually originally called buffalo. I think it's a mistranslation of French colonies settling in Indian or native land, and now is called buffalo. But I think it was called something else at one point.
You know what else is weird? What do Buffalo fans call their baseball team?
The Bisons.
Oh, come on.
I don't know.
You got to make it a Z. The Bisons.
The Bisons. I'm not from Buffalo. I don't have that nasally Midwestern mix of an accent. So, Ahmad, thanks for
Yeah.
the question. I don't think we answered it.
I don't think we did. We tried.
Do buffaloes get milked? Like female buffaloes? Are they? Because they graze, right?
I'm gonna go with yes, but
I'm gonna go with no. I've never heard of buffalo milk. I've had buffalo burger and stuff. I'm gonna say nobody is milking buffalo. EB
Oh, okay. Are you talking about for yeah? I see
extracting
what you're
milk. Yeah,
saying
I'm
now.
gonna say they milk for their infants, but like nobody's
Yeah.
making buffalo cheese. Maybe.
I really wish Greg Thompson was in here because this would be the perfect time to do a Meet the Fockers reference of, well, can you milk me, Greg? But
I've got nipples. Can you milk me?
I'll give it a shot. EB, what's up?
I need to stop laughing first. Hold on. Moving on. it's been a lot of talk about Bills going offense 1 and 2 in round. I don't. How do we feeling about that? The D line is with our safety situation. I'm just not feeling real early. What do you guys think?
Go ahead, Chris.
Depends so much on what happens in free agency.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it, but it depends. It depends on what happens with Tremaine and Jordan and some of these other guys who are, you know,
Yeah, my ideal offseason is the investments I think make the most sense to invest a little bit on defense in free agency, maybe filling some of the holes. I think Poyer is going to be gone, so I think that's one you have to fill. I would love to retain Edmonds and using some of that free agent capital money and then go heavy offensively through the draft because I think there's needs on that side of the ball. I don't necessarily think I am on the same page as the majority of people I interact with who, I think desperately think we need a weapon to come in and immediately start. I actually like our skill position players, and I do want to add to that, but I don't need it to be round one talent. Like I really want to invest in the offensive line, and I'm not sure that this free agency period is the best to get the high end guys or overinvest because I'm not sure they're worth it. And I think people are going to overpay for that next tier of guys, which I am fine if the Bills overpay maybe a little bit for Ben Powers or if if we're lucky, getting a Dalton Reisner type of that tier. But I'm also okay with them addressing in free agency just depth and then going high end in the draft on offense. So if it's offense back to back and it is offensive line to protect Josh Allen even twice with that, or getting that third receiver, a slot guy that can come in and play and share reps with Shakir, I'm cool with it. But to Chris's point, I think it depends on how Tremaine Edmonds, Jordan Poyer really plays out.
yeah. And I mean, I don't think that. I guess maybe Jordan's situation doesn't have as big of an impact because I don't want them to go high with a safety pick, even if they can't bring Poyer back because like we were just talking about. I mean, there are options out there in free agency that you could bring in for a relatively reasonable contract. And I mean, sure, if you want to draft as a safety and develop them in the system, that's great. But I just don't think you need to spend a day one or a day two pick on one of those guys. Linebacker is a little bit of a different story. Like if Edmonds doesn't come back and they can't sign one of these top guys who are going to be available, then I do think they need to think about a day one or a day two pick on a linebacker because it's a really big drop off from Tremaine Edmonds to, whoever else, Dodson, Bernard at this point in his career.
I think Eric brought up a great point in the Cover One Slack channel a little bit too about Balin Spector maybe developing
Yeah,
as that person, and I don't think that I feel great.
that would make me laugh a lot if Balin
Yeah.
Spector develops into the starting middle linebacker after all the crap the Bills got for that pick. I mean, I wouldn't be mad about it, but it would just make me laugh a lot.
I'd like
His
to.
his instincts are. I'm telling you, his instincts are insane. I just wonder if he can play NFL level football. But yeah, if Balin's, this is why I don't like grading drafts after year one because people are like, oh, the Bills draft suck, blah blah blah. Well, if Balin Spector's the Bills starting middle linebacker for the next 3 years and he's good at doing that, and Kyer Elam rounds into CB2 and Khalil Shakir ends up being a solid slot, and Christian Benford can move to safety, then suddenly people are going to look back at the 2022 NFL draft and say, oh my gosh, the Bills killed it.
Yeah, develop.
That's a lot of ifs, by the way.
Well, yeah, for sure. But development is lost on how we interact with the draft. I mean, if you're going to say Bean sucks at drafting and only point out the misses, it's also hard to then look at the roster that he's compiled as one of the better rosters in the NFL through good moderate deals, mostly in free agency, and getting guys through the draft that have been big time contributors that are already starting their second. Time limit. I put a time limit on my phone to shut down Twitter after an hour. It's the dumbest thing I do. I'm definitely going to be on Twitter for more than an hour. And it just popped up.
So that little dip in the audio, that was your
it.
timer.
Yeah, and I don't want it to sound like Eric was not alluding to that the Bills could actually roll into the season with Balen Spector as a starting middle linebacker. But I do think maybe they are higher on some of the guys in their depth. I know people say they don't have any confidence in their young players to play them, which I do think the Bills probably need more of that to give guys the respect versus having to earn it all the time, especially in the case of a Kyrie Elam. But I do think they believe in the plan of development of the guys they have in the building. And so I could see a bridge situation where they believe in Balen Spector. Maybe the move they make isn't as significant as we think because they're just going to patch together 1 year because in year three, they really think that maybe he could be stepping into that role.
I want to add one thing because I with the draft, I've gone back and forth, or not back and forth, but all over the place on where they're going to go, what they're going to emphasize. But I'm going to say this. I don't know if it will happen, but it's definitely something I could foresee happening. And don't be surprised if this team goes really in depth in either free agency or the draft on the defensive line. If the linebacker position's uncertain, if they do want to roll the dice on Balen Spector or Terrell Bernard, or maybe a cheap free agent that bridges the gap for maybe a season, I could definitely see them trying to bolster the line even further to try and alleviate some of the responsibility from that middle linebacker, maybe making their coverage duties easier because there's more pressure, or going after, some of these cheaper immediate impact D linemen in free agency, like maybe a Melvin Ingram or someone else, or maybe even investing an early pick on the defensive line just to try and get the pass rush back, especially if McDermott's planning on, if he inherits the play calling, being more aggressive as a whole.
Yeah, I think you're right. We talked about that a little bit last week with how, I think you brought up the question, like, would you guys be shocked if we spend an early pick on a defensive end? I mean, knowing this, we don't need to get into that again. I know that elicited some mixed responses last time, but on the linebacker conversation, I mean, one possibility too that has been thrown out there that I think is something that they consider potentially is Milano as the Mike, and then someone like Terrell Bernard filling in where at Milano's old spot. It's a possibility.
If Milano,
I don't know how likely it is.
If we're gonna get crazy and start wish casting or stuff like that too, I'm not saying it's unfounded. I could see them going positionless. We talked about it a little bit on the show, and you know where I'm going. I think, Chris, if Milano's going to Mike, I want Taki on my team. I do. I love the way the guy plays. I think that he and Milano would be fun together. I think he would be very vulnerable and undersized at the linebacker position, but I think it's a passing league. So, F it. Let's get undersized and play positionless linebacker.
Taki.
Like I said before, thank you, Ahmad. Like I said when you brought it up, I co-signed any reason to say Taki more often. So if the Bills want to bring him in, I'm up for it.
I'm into it, man. All right, I think on that note, since I started early, I think it's a good opportunity here to wrap up. Anybody have any last minute here things they want to get in before the end here? I know Joe's got a show coming up on Saturday afternoon, and you want to push that one more time?
Yes, thank you, Aaron. So for all that didn't hear it before, if you are here, I am hosting Cover One's newest show, Under Review, every Saturday at 11 a.m. This weekend, my guest Josh McCarty and Uber Hansen, who is joining me as well, are coming on to talk about some free agency fun. We'll talk about players leaving, staying, and we'll talk about some potential targets the Bills can go for. So YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, come join me, hang out, relax, grab a cup of coffee or a sandwich if you're a 11 a.m. lunch person, and let's hang out and have a good time.
Awesome. I love it. Chris, how did...
And don't forget what's this article in the Twitter on the record by others Twitter, like you can watch me, Hassel, Thomas, Doge, or anyone to channel listen to replay what after I speak it to all of you.
Sounds good. We had last night. We had another Sabres watch party. The Sabres game was a little bit rough, but
was it? Was it still
But
fun?
the game itself wasn't fun, but we had a lot of
Good.
fun. That's one of the things that I love about it. Like, even when the game goes
Go
bad, like,
sideways.
we still have a great time. Yeah, we had Ryan Sullivan in there trying to convince us that cereal is soup, which was
Sorry
crazy,
about
and
that. No.
and and I had a lot of fun going at him about that. And Lauren Oubre joined the stage, which was awesome. Seeing, she got on camera and she
Nice.
gave Ryan some crap too, and had some fun stuff to say
I was gonna
about
say
about hockey. So,
we should watch party some golf here some morning. I'm watching golf.
oh yeah,
At,
I would totally be
Oh,
down
I
for that.
I will sign up for that. Yeah,
Yeah, we'll
do that.
talk. We'll talk, guys. That sounds
all
great.
right.
Well, we're gonna do another Sabres thing tomorrow for the Rangers game at 5 p.m. So that'll be on playback. If you go to playback.tv/cover1, you can join our room. It's free. It's a lot of fun. I hope you guys will join us there. Like I said, even when the Sabres, it's a lot more fun to watch it and laugh with some friends, and even when they're bad. But they're a fun team to watch. Even they still scored a bunch of goals last
That's
night,
what
even though they got
I
creamed.
keep hearing, that it is still fun. I don't believe half the people that are still having fun. I think that they might be fun to watch, but I feel like everyone's nervous mafia and feels like, oh, here we go again. They're sucking again.
Well, the thing is, they are a year ahead
Sure.
of where they're supposed to be. Like they developed a little quicker, and um, they got into the hunt this year, which no one really expected.
Are they
That
out
was
of it
supposed to
now,
happen
or are they
next
still
year.
in?
No, they're still in the hunt. They've made things much more difficult for themselves over the past couple
Yeah.
weeks, but
That's just the Buffalo way. That's how we do it. Like, it wouldn't be interesting unless we made it really difficult on ourselves.
right.
Uh,
But anyway,
all right, guys. Yeah, I got to go get this kid. It's snowing. I'm gonna probably have to shovel today. So that's fun. I have that to look forward to. But next week when we talk, guys, I think it's going to be an action-packed spaces here with obviously a lot of news, not just for the Bills, but the league as a whole is going to look different. I'm sure the AFC East is going to look different. It is going to be a busy week, I think, at Cover One with lots of shows, lots of content coming out. So if you're here, you're a fan, make sure that you're subscribed across every platform to Cover One, especially over on YouTube. Make sure that you are clicking that notification bell on the YouTube channel so that every time we put out content, whether it's live or just releasing videos, premiering videos, you get notified of it and can hop in and check it out. So appreciate everyone coming on and listening to Spaces on their Friday morning. Thomas, thanks for coming out speaking.
don't forget to check out the Greg Thompson Sports
Oh
Show
yeah,
tonight, by
it's
the way,
Friday night.
9 p.m. over on Cover One YouTube. He's going to be doing March Madness feature, so get ready for that. He's going to have someone on there,
Let's go Huskies.
explaining how you can set up the most successful bracket this year. So
UConn.
it'll be a good show.
Pick UConn to win. There you go. Free money. All right, guys. I'm gonna get out of here. Thanks for everyone coming on. Hans, Thomas, Joe, you guys are dope. Ahmad, thanks for the laugh, man. The cow question. I'm gonna ponder that all day. Buffaloes and cows. So, thanks, guys, so much. Chris, always appreciate your time, buddy. I hope you have a fantastic weekend.
Thanks to
All
you,
right,
Aaron.
man. Take care, guys. Go Bills.
Go Bills.